boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this, a rather interesting read that Katie Taylor sounds intrigued with catchweight bout versus Mikaela Mayer, who holds alphabet titles at 2 weights simultaneously right now. Katie Taylor has checked off on a lot of boxes. She's won world titles in multiple weight classes. She's beaten some of the best fighters in the world, including rival Amanda Serrano in July, to sweep their trilogy, and she's made millions of dollars. What's next? I don't know, to be honest. The 39-year-old Irish woman told True School Sports during a recent interview, "I'm waiting for a big fight that actually does excite me. I feel like I've done it all in the sport. I'm just waiting for a fight that actually excites me and motivates me." One potential opponent who intrigues Taylor is Mikaela Mayer, 22-2 with 5 knockouts, who recently became a unified junior middleweight champion at 35, with her wide UD win over Mary Spencer on October 30th. The two are a few weight classes apart, but Taylor, 25-1 with 6 knockouts, appears to be open to finding a middle ground to make their fantasy fight a reality. Mikaela is a fantastic fighter, and I feel she hasn't gotten the credit she deserves these last few years, Taylor said. She's phenomenal. That would be an amazing fight. She's a great all-around fighter. You need to be well prepared going into a fight like that. There is a legitimate argument that at 39 going on 40, Mikaela Mayer may be a bridge too far for Katie Taylor. They're separated by weight, and even with a catch weight, that doesn't really even the score. Katie Taylor campaigns at 140, where Mikaela last fought at 154. The middle ground would have to be somewhere at welter for what still is Mikaela's WBO title. And the presumed promoter for the show would have to be Matchroom, not Top Rank, since Top Rank have been on unstable ground as of this summer when their ESPN deal ended. We don't know what the future holds for them, and not that it matters because Katie Taylor is the clear A-side over Mikaela Mayer, that if Mikaela wants that fight, and I think she does, she has to play ball, she has to be willing to compromise, and perhaps cross the street. And that's assuming that Netflix doesn't get involved, decides to pick up the fight themselves and air it on their platform, because remember, Katie Taylor's last 2 fights were on Netflix. For a number of years, Mikaela Mayer has expressed her desire and her willingness to box Katie Taylor, but she didn't make her career all about Katie, like, say, Chantel Cameron. That Mikaela Mayer has managed to get a lot done all without Katie Taylor. One of the few fighters that came up alongside her that Katie Taylor didn't fight. They were always separated by weight. When Mikaela was at 130, Katie was at 135. Now that Katie's at 140, Mikaela's toggling between 147 and 154. And I think a part of the reason that Mikaela and Katie have never really campaigned at the same weight at the same time is because Mikaela didn't make her entire career about boxing Katie like Chantel Cameron did. And what I chalk up to a case of arrested development when it comes to Chantel, where Mikaela has gone from strength to strength. She's only gotten better ever since the loss to Alicia Baumgartner, and there is a legitimate argument that at this point, Mikaela might be a bridge too far for Katie. We know that she's younger than Katie by a few years, but she's also taller and longer, arguably bigger since she's campaigning at heavier weights than Katie Taylor. That even though she may have moved up from 130, at this point, she's the bigger woman. She's bigger than Katie. She's fought at 147. She's boxed at 154. Look goddamn good doing it. I don't know that this is a genuine interest so much as a passing interest, a fleeting interest, that she was asked about fighting Mikaela, and she says that she's open to it, but behind the scenes, I don't think there are any wheels in motion for that fight. Separately, there was a story that Netflix has some interest in putting Katie Taylor in the ring with former UFC champion Ronda Rousey for what is a boxing match. Now, when it comes to those 2 fights, I would rather see Katie box Mikaela than box Ronda, though ultimately, if Netflix really has an interest in bankrolling that fight, then you know which fight pays more, irrespective of which fight is better and which fight is a genuine contest. What I don't hear Katie talking about is a trilogy with Chantel. I think that after all these years of tearing her down and just acting the way she acted, even after they fought, I don't think Katie wants to give Chantel
the satisfaction.
Currently, they are 1-1 with each other. Chantel won the first one, Katie won the rematch. There is a need for a tiebreaker, a precedent, but I don't get the sense that Katie will give Chantel the satisfaction at this very late stage in her career.
I don't know what Katie's gonna do, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if in the coming months she decides, you know what? It's time to hang them up. It's time to retire.
In men's welterweight news, Conor Benn says concrete plans in place to fight Brian Garcia on Cinco de Mayo. Conor Benn says there are concrete plans in place to match him with Brian next year. Benn fought in November against Chris Eubank Jr. in a rematch and beat him by UD on the ring's unfinished business card at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. After spending 2025 campaigning at middle, where he's ranked number 4 by the ring, Benn is ready to move back down to welter to challenge for the WBC title. Benn was recently ranked number 1 by the sanctioning body and appears likely to face the winner of Barrios versus Garcia, which is set to take place on February 21st. The Destroyer assumes Garcia will beat Barrios to win the title, setting up a spring showdown. I'll be waiting for the WBC World title next, Benn told The Ring. For me, that's always been a dream. It's been my plan. It's been my goal. And to win the World Boxing Council title means everything for me. I don't think many nights will top my last fight in terms of victory, but I believe winning the WBC World title will, and I thank the World Boxing Council for giving me this opportunity to get that world title and to get themselves some hefty sanctioning fees. I know that if Brian Garcia comes through against Barrios, from what I'm hearing, there are plans next. Concrete plans. I think everybody's banking on him winning. It's an away day for the fans, shall we say. Vegas, T-Mobile Arena, Cinco de Mayo. Sounds good to me, doesn't it? Should the plan come into fruition, it would mark the second big event taking place on Cinco de Mayo weekend, as David Benavidez is set to challenge Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez for his 2 cruiserweight titles. As a result of that schedule clash, it's also possible Garcia Benn could move to later in the year. Barrios versus Garcia has yet to be confirmed, but The Ring reported at the beginning of November a deal was close to being completed, and for now, an announcement is imminent.
Now, while Benavidez versus Zurdo features not one but 2 fighters of Mexican descent, ultimately, that's not the bigger fight. Benn versus Garcia comparatively would be much bigger.
Big enough to eclipse Benavidez versus Zurdo if they were happening the same weekend. But if it's bigger, then why is that the fight they want to move?
Because DAZN is going to be the broadcaster for the both of those pay-per-views, for Benavidez versus Zurdo, for Garcia versus Benn.
They're going to be involved, and they don't want to cannibalize one big show with another. So it's in their best interest to move one of those fights off of that date.
What makes Benn versus Garcia bigger than Benavidez versus Zurdo?
Well, neither David Benavidez or Zurdo Ramirez in America command the same audience that Conor Benn does in the UK. And neither David Benavidez or Zurdo Ramirez are as popular in the United States as Ryan Garcia. They may both be more accomplished boxers than Brian, but they're not as popular with the younger crowd. Ryan's been palling around with anyone from Christian Rock to streamer Neon.
Now, to the older crowd, those 2 names may seem alien, almost foreign, but to the younger audience, they know exactly who those streamers, social media influencers are. And I've long maintained that Ryan Garcia, upon close analysis, is more social media influencer than pugilist. He's almost an influencer that moonlights as a boxer. So between his social media following and Conor's organic following in the UK, that makes for a bigger event than Benavidez versus Zurdo.
But what about the Devin Haney rematch? I mean, Devin's got a title at welter. If Ryan wins one too, isn't there money in putting them back in the ring with each other?
There is, but not as much as what you get in the Conor Benn fight.
The Conor Benn fight is a transatlantic fight that would bring a UK audience together with an American one, whereas with Devin, you're primarily dealing with Americans, and in a very general sense, Devin, in spite of commanding large purses, he doesn't command a large audience. I've long maintained what he gets for a fight is manufactured. It's all based on the money DAZN was kicking out to bring him to their platform. It was never based on his drawing power, how many tickets he can sell, how many pay-per-views. So for years now, I would argue that Devin's been overpaid.
Now, that's not to say that there's no value in a rematch between him and Ryan, but objectively speaking, a fight with Conor is bigger. It's just bigger.
And I would also argue that, aesthetically, I like the Benn fight more than the Haney fight. Conor Benn is an action fighter, and so is Brian Garcia. And because they both have their flaws, you're not going to have guys being overly careful with each other.
Like Devin was overly careful in the Ramirez fight, and to some degree in the Brian Norman fight.
You could argue that Devin is a more accomplished fighter than Ryan and a better boxer than Conor, but ultimately, I want to see the more entertaining fight. As a boxing fan, as a customer, I care more about the aesthetic than the bells and whistles, and I think Conor Benn versus Ryan Garcia makes for a more entertaining fight than the Haney fight. Conor Benn claims that there are concrete plans in place should Ryan win to put them in the ring with each other, which might be the reason that now Devin Haney has set his sights on Lewis Crocker, this division's IBF champion. So while they're doing that, he may be doing this.
He's going to end up being one of these really accomplished guys that you just don't want to watch. Like Rigo was at 122, like Lara at 154.
What do they have in common? They're all pure boxers, all three of them, and pure boxers are just not my cup of tea. So maybe if Devin Haney emerges victorious against Lewis, he can then get the winner of Conor Benn versus Ryan Garcia, which to me would be adequate build-up to make that a meaningful fight, a big fight, with a lot on the line for perhaps a lot of money. But here and now, I prefer Benn versus Garcia over Haney versus Garcia, and I hope that's the way it happens.
I mean, look, I think obviously the American sort of strategy took a big blow in the Andy Ruiz fight. And I think if we would have won that fight, I think we would have returned several times since. Obviously, the size of the audience on Friday, and also, you know, we've even seen it on a much smaller level with our documentary. It's a different audience, right? It's not boxing. Even every American boxing fan knows who Anthony. These aren't boxing fans that are suddenly going, "Oh, who's this guy?" These are just casual fans across various different demographics who don't really know a lot about boxing and have come across this guy who speaks so well, who looks like he's carved out of stone. And it's like, wow. And the answer to your question, yes. I mean, it's all day I've been thinking about our US strategy and how we can capitalize on this. This changes everything. You know, people don't like it when I say that AJ was already arguably the biggest star in boxing. Now, by far the biggest star in boxing. Right now, there is absolutely no question that Anthony Joshua is the biggest star in world boxing, right? But how does that strategy change moving forward, particularly in the American market? Because, you know, I know, and you know how personable he is, how likable he is. You know, his brand has just been so easy to build, obviously, with all his attributes over the years. And we can do the same thing in America, and it's a big market. So it's going to be an interesting couple of weeks.
It would seem that, inadvertently, this fight with Jake Paul has allowed Anthony Joshua to cross over into uncharted territory. Just like Eddie Hearn said, those weren't your conventional boxing fans watching that fight on Friday.
When you're talking about numbers like 33 million for a card, for a fight, that's not your hardcore boxing fans anymore. Not all of them. Most of those are casuals.
It was veteran content creator Raf 2.0 who said Anthony Joshua lost 1 million followers on Insta in the year that followed the Daniel Dubois knockout. Since beating Jake Paul last weekend, he's gained almost 2 million followers in 2 days. Huge traction for brand AJ stateside, and many of those followers, I'd wager, are women. Women who are smitten with Anthony Joshua, his budding good looks, and his posh English accent.
Based on what we've been seeing from social media, it would seem that a lot of American women are just now finding out about this guy.
Wrath continued, Anthony Joshua's sex appeal has sent the American audience into a frenzy. AJ's gained millions of followers in just 3 days, largely female and indiscriminate of race. Anthony Joshua is now the biggest heavyweight boxing star in America after the 33 million Netflix viewer figures were released and the cultural knock-on effects of his win over Jake. His reach has transcended far beyond the usual suspects in boxing, courtesy of Netflix and their degree of mainstream pop culture penetration. In terms of relevance, platform, and pop culture penetration, Joshua has now become the top of that pile. This decade, Tyson Fury held the mantle of the biggest heavyweight boxing star in America after knocking out Wilder twice and building his brand stateside. Towards the end of the 2010s, after their first fight, Fury took America by storm. However, following his association with FBI-investigated individuals, he has been banned from entering the United States of America, limiting how much grip he can keep of his current standing there.
Tyson's star in the United States has dimmed due to his absence, and the 2 losses to Usyk, that didn't help it.
But if Anthony Joshua lost 2 fights to that same Alexander Usyk, why is his star rising in this country? And it's because you can't pick and choose. You can't decide for other people what they like about a fighter, what they like about an athlete. And if a lot of women in America like AJ for no other reason than his sex appeal, than his looks, it just is what it is. That's how it was for Oscar de la Hoya in his heyday. He was quite popular with the ladies.
And that's what's making AJ popular now in some sectors.
I mean, think about it. You got a guy standing in at 6'6", 240, 250, carved out of iron.
He's got an accent. American broads love a guy with an accent. To them, the moment that this guy opens his mouth with that English accent, they're gonna think they're in a Shakespearean play.
They're gonna be teleported into a Jane Austen book the moment this guy opens his mouth, and you can't undermine the value of that. Sex sells.
Ladies love cool AJ.
Now, if you're wondering, what the hell does any of this have to do with boxing and why should we care? It's because it makes the Tyson Fury showdown that much bigger. It won't just be hardcore boxing fans in Britain and hardcore boxing fans in America watching when that goes down. This fight has just become exponentially bigger. And based on this past weekend's viewing figures, you have to wonder if Netflix won't make another play to bring AJ back to their platform. He's supposed to be exclusive to DAZN.
But they worked it out to where he was able to go over there for one fight. So who's to say that Netflix won't put up even more money to bring him back? But not just him, Tyson Fury.
AJ vs. Fury on Netflix is exponentially bigger than it would be on any other platform. You think Netflix doesn't have that in mind? I'm just telling you, I wouldn't be surprised if Netflix doesn't make a play to bring that fight to their platform, because they only really care about the big ones, the biggest of the big fights.
And that one's a fucking whale.